If you watch Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, you will learn there are other dimensions. You will learn how to connect to beyond. If you watch Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, you will learn there are other dimensions.
Well, it is streaming.
How to connect.
I'm watching it on a second screen, so.
Yeah, boss, but we've tried everything. And they keep shooting at us. Yeah, we've preserved all the biological data. Okay, we'll just let them kill themselves. Oh, crap. Alexa? Off! Alexa. Turn off, Alexa. Stop recording. Oh, crap. Is this live?
If you watch Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, it will increase your psychic abilities. Maybe a little too much.
It's a little scary.
Humans think we're gonna save them. But they keep shooting at us. Oh yeah, we could save them, no problem. Easy, save the whole planet. But we're not gonna, because they keep shooting at us.
All right, let's go. You ready? Let's see if this works. All right. Hey, folks. That does look a little weird. I gotta adjust something here. I've got a green screen in the background here. So, hey, folks, how are you doing tonight? Welcome back to another edition of Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy. We've got him here, all the way from an undisclosed location somewhere. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Hey, I just want to give a big shout out to Julie. Uh, Julie, thanks for your comments there. We had obviously a little, I just want to say before we get going, but this is really interesting. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about tonight. I just want to stop for a second before we go any farther. And we had some technical issues, but we've got it working now, and we've got Bud on. And I'm still figuring out exactly how we get this to YouTube. And ideally, I'd like it so when I post the show up ahead of time, like 15 minutes or an hour, or maybe the day before, we actually go into that screen. And so far, when I've been going live, it creates another screen, and it still says waiting for Reality's Edge on the other. I will figure it, but I think we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of months. We're on. We've got you on. I'm not holding a little camera up to a screen, and wait a second. Julie is saying she can't. Julie, you can't hear Bud. Is that right? Why don't you let us know? I can hear Bud fine. I can hear you fine on my end, Bud. Let's see. No, I can hear you fine. Should be working. Let me check the audio. No sound on Buddy. Let's see. Let's see. Buddy, can you say something over there?
Yes, I am still here.
Oh, okay. And now we got you. I had somehow it seemed like. Hold on a second, folks.
I pressed for a second. Can she not hear? Still, Julie, the audience can't hear?
I had you. I had your mic down on the sound levels for your mic, but not on mine. That was not intentional. Nobody heard anything you said, Buddy. I heard what you said. I want to go back to it in a second, but let's. Hold on. I can hear you. Say something again, Buddy. Just talk for a moment so people can hear you.
Sure. I think some of our listeners may remember last year we had a predictions episode.
Yes.
And I spoke about at the very beginning of the year about Trump getting not impeached for the crime, but for obstruction. And all of these different things. If you go back and listen to that, a lot of them came true that first month.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, many came that first month. And I'd like to go back and do an analysis of those and see how it came out. Of course, I'm going to be biased being the predictor, but I've got a series of new ones for next year, and some of them kind of almost already happened, like right after I had done them to a certain degree. I guess it could just be, with viewing and feeling things, so there's lots of cool stuff that we have for our audience members. There's a lot of new science breaking, the new space program.
It is really, but it's really getting exciting. By the way, everyone, we have now something I've never seen this before. This system we're using, I actually can see Julie's comments and Shania's comments right in the software of the Ecamm. We're using something called Ecamm Live, and it shows us comments right in the software. I don't have to go to the YouTube page, even though I can monitor this. So I think it's good, folks. Julie says she can hear you fine. So, beautiful. Hey, folks, welcome back. So Buddy was saying, okay, we were talking about predictions. We did that prediction episode, and there was a lot of stuff that was accurate in that. But before we started talking about that, I kind of envisioned we're going to do a bunch of shows here over the next week. So why don't we hold off on the predictions for a little later? You started, but can you repeat what you told me, which I heard, but the audience heard, because I unintentionally muted your mic, Bud. You were talking about Wright-Patterson facilities there, what you've learned about this. Can you repeat it? Because I just want to say before you go into this, I'm reading Grant Cameron talked a few days ago on Lorien Fenton Files. It's a podcast she does, Lorien Fenton, about this new book by Jacques Vallée. He's done for Forbidden Science Volume 4. And this is like his diaries of all his conversations with all the people we know so well, Hal and Kit. And it's from 1990. The book starts in 1990, but I don't know exactly why he's actually repeating verbatim the conversations with many people about what's going on with this. And you were saying something which fits right into what Jacques was talking about, is to the extent to which this is a deep, dark government secret, or is it not a deep? And this is what his conversation with Hal and Kit and Ron Blackburn and many other people that he knows. It starts off with him in Soviet Union, and when they tell him what they know, but then they'd say you can't repeat it because it's too sensitive. And so, Bud, what were you saying about Right Pat? It fits into all of this.
Well, at the beginning part of the year, I'd gotten some information about Trump being briefed and secretly giving a large chunk of money towards a program. And it was, I forget the subcommittee that had an involvement in it. A subcommittee on, I can't remember what it was. Not science technology. It was, I can't remember. But anyway, it was not a huge amount for a Space Force, or really to do this thing. You know, you need millions and millions and millions and millions. And we know that there are, you know, logically, every branch of the military would have a UFO, program running. And there's a lot of evidence about the Army, tremendous about the Navy, and even more about the Air Force. But anyway, Trump launched the Space Force, and the Space Force, we know, has a secret area under Wright Pat base. It's not completely secret because it actually has been mentioned in newspapers. So you can Google it. This isn't a conspiracy story. This is fact, solid fact. And the reason why the information came out is because they had just paid a certain amount of money, like $500 million, to renovate the biological labs on this second basement floor. I know some other things about that area. There's a second and a third level. And I know a few things about it. And I guess one thing I'd say is that it's very obvious to assume that if they have biological laboratories and they're very high, one of them is with those multiple layers of bioprotection.
Yeah.
So you have to go through, it's like Biohazard 7 or whatever it is, that level. Anyway, there is biological material. We know from crashes, there's been reports of everything from catalyst liquid from the craft. These are reported by military. These are military reports, not wild conspiracies. Catalyst liquid to dead, beings. And if that were true, if what we are seeing is, UFOs, and they're from another place, or they're from who knows where, if the beings inside of them are constructed, whatever those biological entities are, they'd be stored somewhere. They'd be highly prized by any government. And
Absolutely,
they made them apparently with the early versions, and they've got a lot of craft material. Every country, you can be sure all the major ones have a little sprinkle of biological material as well. So that's all Right Pat.
Yeah. Now, there is a very interesting book by Don Schmidt called The Real Area 51 about Wright Patterson, the secret history of Wright Patterson. It's a great book.
Right Pat.
What's that?
They think of Tonopah or,
right.
S4, S2, or Area 51. They don't think about the most obvious place right under, but it's the safest spot. You have to come in with a mega army to take out Wright Pat to get to go see that.
Yeah, if there's any Air Force base that's considered the main central Air Force base in the United States, it's Wright Pat. And this is where the Foreign Technology Division is. And what does the Foreign Technology Division do? Well, since World War II, it wasn't called Wright Pat then. It was just called Wright Field. They, took apart Nazi aircraft and later Soviet aircraft to, figure out how they work. And it would be a logical place to bring any aircraft, any flying materials. Well, Don Schmidt's book is really fascinating because he's done a lot of interviews. It's been renamed. It has another title now. It's not called The Real Area 51. I looked it up the other day on Amazon, and it's got another name because it's been updated. But I'll tell you, it's a great read because he has some really great little vignettes in there, including a dentist he talked to who was brought a very small jaw and told to make a plaster cast of it. And he looked at it, and they told him, once you've finished it, you need to destroy the cast that you made. We just want one copy. You can't talk to anyone about this. Well, he said to them, he looked at this and said, this is human. what is this? I don't know what the species this is. And they
Wow.
just looked really, like they didn't tell him anything. And he, so that was a very interesting thing with that dentist. They come to him, make the cast, but destroy it afterwards. We want one
That's
copy.
very,
And
I've
then,
heard a very interesting incident. There was someone, I'll just say who it was, Paul Murad. I interviewed Paul Murad on my channel, and I was incredibly respectful and conservative, although I knew a lot more about his past history, and I also have assumptions and other things about it. But he was the head of NERVA. He was the head of the nuclear propulsion system. He was the go-to guy for any nuclear propulsion systems around the time of Cash Landrum.
yeah, right.
Anyway, there is a scientist that I know who is I can't say too much about him, but he's in black programs, and he recently disappeared into another black program. But he's been a friend and asked for consultation and back and forth and whatever. Anyway, after the Paul Murad story, he knows all these guys. He's worked on all these programs. I can't say that either. Anyway, he said, when you speak to Paul Murad next, ask him about the tiny alien in the liquid copper Faraday cage. The scientist is it's not my friend from the Canadian company. If anyone assumes it's that person, it's not. But that Canadian scientist does know who he is. This scientist.
Well, let me stop you.
Really, him to say it gave it a lot of credibility.
No, okay, so that's all. This is so interesting that we're talking about Right Pat. There's a local SSE branch around here, SSE Boulder Society for Scientific Exploration. They had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with Paul Smith about RV. Paul Smith drove over from Salt Lake City.
Yep. Had
some issues with his Volt, his Chevy Volt, but he made it here. And he spoke here and then later at the Boulder Exo Society about RV. And that night he talked about what RV has told us about UFOs and ETs. And anyway, I met someone there at the SSE meeting and we talked a little bit. And she said that in the company that she worked for, a tech company that had some dealings with government agencies, this wasn't high tech, but this was a tech company that deals with government agencies for, ordinary technology, computers and things like this. And one of the guys came back from Right Pat and said to her that he had been shown an alien in liquid.
Wow.
Now, and I said, are you sure? And she said he wasn't joking. They were just around. He had a security clearance and some of the guards or someone said, hey, do you want to see something really interesting? And he said that. Now, alien in liquid. Now, you just said liquid. Am I right, Bud, or not?
I did a remote viewing, too, of some of the parts that I don't know about. Locations in it. And that was in the viewing. So.
Did you say the alien was in a Faraday liquid cage? I heard you say the word liquid.
Some sort of there was a liquid copper, a liquid Faraday cage.
Interesting. Well, let me bring up one more aspect of Don's book. He has all these different things. The Blue Room, the Barry Goldwater story, where he tried to find out from Curtis LeMay. Mm-hmm. Remember this story? And Curtis,
he was the Army into the 5th Cavalry or whatever into Area 51, right?
And Curtis LeMay said, don't ever bring this up again or I'll have you court-martialed. To Barry Goldwater, senior senator from Arizona, Republican senior senator, retired from the Air Force or Air Force National Guard. And his friend says, I'm going to court-martial if you ever bring up the alien subject about Right Pat. Well, Don in his book says that there was a news reporter who got invited to lecture at the base, and he brought up the subject of rumors of aliens being there, and he said the room went absolutely quiet. I forgot exactly what he said, something about the dental cast or something about something, and he said they just absolutely silent. The room just went very uncomfortable silence. Anyway, that's Don Schmidt's book. You're bringing up Right Pat. Buddy, so you're saying there are some remains there at Right Pat. There really is a Blue Room. And
had for a while a group of scientists working on the metamaterial there and a hull material.
The nitinol, right? We're talking about that metal from allegedly from Roswell, which is made of titanium nickel, which
Actually,
the Air
this
Force
one,
patented nitinol, a
yeah.
memory metal.
And we call it metamaterial, but like a brilliant woman recently, reminded me, it's really nanotech. This is really
Right.
manufacturing from the nano level. This is one atom at a time. They decide what functions they want out of the craft. They find out the material that's needed, the integration and interaction between them, the layering required, and that's why there's different parts of the craft have different composition based on different needs, but there's also some things that are spread out across the entirety of the craft. And you have to assume that these craft have to have a whole bunch of different things. They must have, that they'd have to have scanning of some ability to scan to know that you're there. Whether that scanning could be something we don't understand, future scanning, or through the multiverse scanning, or who knows? But there's all these different things that we require, and there's so much stuff that comes from it's super advanced technology. We reverse engineer it like they did before, Soviet and other countries' technology, German technology. It's within your grasp. You can recreate this physically because this is built by man. But when you're trying to reverse engineer nanotechnology that you don't even have yet, you can be completely stumped by it. But there's some fun and cool things to assume and think about. I was thinking they'd have to have incredibly powerful, either on board or somehow projected to them from a cloud computing power. And that would be spread out over the hull and perhaps give it a large amount of computing space.
Well,
Or
the
in one sense, in a crystal or something.
Julie says it's true nanotechnology, nanu nanu. So,
Nanu, Julie, I love you, Julie. You are the best.
thank you, Julie, for that, buddy.
And the shape from
Yeah.
Mork and Mindy.
Yes, good old Robin Williams. I mean, boy, oh boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
my little girl.
Listen, buddy, are we dealing with extraterrestrials or are we dealing with parallel reality tunnelers who have come from alternate Earth time streams that have found a way to time travel? Or both?
It's a dynamic phenomenon. Many different things are happening. It's like the orb phenomena. A lot of people say it's just orbs, it's beings, it's ghosts. There's a lot of things going on with the orb phenomena. You can look at everything from Hestelin, where it's definitely a light phenomena. It's moving in ways that we can't account for under traditional natural expectations. They were smart enough in Hestelin, and they still have an ongoing program, a building there that monitors 24 hours a day, and it has for I think 15 years. They even did a very logical thing, which I think we should have cameras ready all over the country to do, is spectrometry on the light orbs in Hestelin, and they found scandium. That's a whole other conversation, right. But orbs are a lot of different things. There are earth lights, there's plasma balls, but then you would think it's conceivable that an advanced civilization might have drones that are these ultra advanced energy forms. There's the famous Belgian case where and you oftentimes see this, a larger craft will release blue, orange,
yes,
red.
What is that? I've always wondered what that is.
I think it's very obvious what they are. If you're an advanced civilization, you probably would have some buddies watching, monitoring, doing all these other things. There was a contact encounter that I am aware of where the main species was there to have the interaction, but two other smaller grays were scanning the area and checking and making sure, there's a lot of different parameters going on, jet fighters coming in and, all sorts of different things. So there's a lot of different possibilities. And wow, is it thrilling and exhilarating to look at the best testimony from the best witnesses and think about the possibilities. I mean, it's boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I just like you, I spend a part of the day, a large part sometimes, wondering what are we dealing with here. There was a comment in Jacques Vallée's book. I couldn't stop reading sections of it because he reveals all these little conversations he's had with everybody. And he said in the Soviet Union, they told him things that were much more than any public statements that any of their cosmonauts had made. You know, their generals and cosmonauts have made statements about the Varajna encounters and all these different. They've had their own encounters over the century and the past century, and he said that they weren't telling half of it when what we knew. Those cosmonauts and generals that have made the statements, you know, publicly, we think, wow, they're so open compared to the U.S. Well, he says they didn't say. They said a tiny fraction of what had really happened. And I spoke to Jacques once at the IRVA conference in Vegas. And this is what he said to me, too. He said, you're not being told what's really going on in these UFO encounters. He said it's much more complex,
They know. They're dropping hints to us. All sorts of obtuse hints. Recently, Dr. Green's scans of those very special soldiers and scientists, and all of them were prodigious savants. He made sure to mention that. And they all had broad spectrum radiation damage. And I think any of those that got within, 30 feet or less, like 50% of them died within, 2 months or something like that. This is a very serious, the most serious kind of cases. I mean, it's staggering.
Go back, buddy. Rewind that. What cases are we talking about? You're more familiar with this.
These are a bunch of cases that Kit Green, there's a scan that came out of a brain of one of the patients, and it has these white spots in it. And they were, I forget the exact name he gave them, a very unusual name. They were very unusual. And to make a long story short, if you put the pieces together, it goes back to our interactive world model. And Vallée talks about all the time. Vallée hints about all this stuff coming from consciousness. We know about psychokinesis. We know about, there's always a disturbed person in ghost cases. So there is that model, the interactive fractal universe model that says a certain consciousness, if they fall into a certain bunch of categories, there's a bunch of things that have to take place, or everyone would be, blowing up stuff everywhere, or doing all sorts of, would have gold bars and, strippers next to them. They could create anything they wanted. It's a very complicated thing, but there are prodigious savants who, when they're under pressure, extreme pressure, bottled up pressure with no spiritual release, there's some scientists like Dr. Hathaway who presume it could have some genetic components from a certain geographical region. But these people, Hutchinson was one, and others that have shown extreme ability, have revealed that the mind can do some of this stuff. And it starts off just like with Hutchinson and very unformed light balls. He would say, stay away from the target area because it's dangerous. There's broad spectrum radiation. These light balls, these twisted forms of energy that are created by consciousness that Hutchinson could create. And we've talked about this before. I think a lot of these phenomena and cases can be explored, at least. It's justifiable to at least explore the possibility that it could be created by the mind.
Are you saying that this has something to do with us, the type of paranormal phenomena that we experience? That some people experience ghosts because of their frequency and their vibe. Some people experience UFOs, actual entities in their homes. Bigfoot. Is this coming from us or is this coming from the outside?
Us. This could be powerful subconscious psychokinetic projections. And Jacques Vallée, I'm forgetting the other two big scientists who believe this also strongly, that some of even the physical craft were created by minds. Now, just hear me out for a minute. They presume it's possible that at first these PK displayers will show raw forms of ball energy because they're just getting used to doing this, essentially. And then it can become more structured over time. But think about this. If you are a 20-year-old guy in the ball turret of a B-52 bomber on your last mission in World War II, under so much stress and tension, poof, Foo Fighters. You're one of a group of young religious zealots who've gone to Fatima because 3 girls told you a miracle was going to happen. You'd see lights dancing in the sky, and they went there and they all saw lights dancing in the sky and the sun moving and all these light phenomena. You are a missile launch operator in a cube underneath Malmstrom Air Force Base to launch from the 50 silos to launch hell and damnation on the earth. Is that your key turn? All that pressure and stress, poof, perhaps the Malmstrom repeat cases. And locations that have a previous incident can inspire another prodigious savant to do the same thing at the location, even if it's subconscious. Now, there's a bunch of other examples that are just like that. You're a naval operator on the Princeton, who's a radar ship to protect the entire fleet. And nowadays, there's hypersonic missiles. You have to defend all of your buddies. These are your best buddies, but you're a military guy under a lot of pressure. You have no spiritual release, and he might have been a savant, and poof, maybe you have Tic Tacs. Maybe you have the Nimitz incident. So I'm not saying color. I think just like the light bulb phenomena is very dynamic, the UFO phenomena is very dynamic. Nothing is cut and dry and simple. It's not Damon's. You can't peg it down too easily. I believe that's just my belief, and we've explored this together a lot, you and I.
Well, Julie says it's symbiotic. S-I-M-B-I-O-T. But
symbiotic.
Yeah, good one. Good.
The logical extension of the two-slit experiment. We create our reality level.
So this is really interesting, buddy. I've never heard anyone present it like the way you're saying it before. And you and I have talked a lot. You're saying it has a lot to do with us, and there's a component of ourselves that we don't understand, and it's juncturing with whatever this bigger reality is. I call it the multiverse, multi-dimensions. That's just the way I look at it. But depending on who you are personally, you're going to juncture with another part of the multiverse and experience that element of the paranormal more than your next door neighbor.
It makes a lot of sense when you look at UFO history, why UFOs have always represented near future technology, because that's a human doing their best to perceive what the future would be like. That's why the phenomena has a reflective nature. They always wonder, why is it reflective? Why does it follow people home? A lot of these phenomena from different locations, UFO phenomena, follow people home afterwards.
I've heard about that in England with the balls of light from people that had talked to a policeman who, I think I mentioned this, who said that they saw these balls of light and it followed them home from one of the hills in that area all the way back to their driveway. And the people in the home saw the balls of light following the car as it pulled into the driveway.
Think about this. And they always talk about this as a very frustrating thing with a lot of locations and ghost locations and UFOs. Very frustrating because they have precognizant ability. Suddenly it makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it? If you're telling it where you're going to go. Maybe Fravor actually created the Tic Tac or directed it or to his next waypoint. I'm not saying this is the case for all the solid cases. I think it's a mixed universe. I think this is a field. We all tap into the field, and when people have used it here, they can detect it. I think there's a combination of things going on, and there's a lot of maturity that we're going to have to.
I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to I have a slightly scratchy throat, and I'm going to get a throat spray, but you can answer it while I'm just walking up and getting this lemon throat spray for singers, which is, buddy, have you heard the people that you're working with mention this idea, or is this just your idea? And I'll be listening while you answer.
Yes, definitely. I've spoke with scientists about it. This is a model that I worked on at a very major facility that you know about. I gave you the information in case anything ever happened to me. So you can verify whatever you know about it being a truly major location and stuff. And the top scientists there believe that this is the model. It makes a lot of sense. But it's not exclusive. There's still gray areas on the end of the model. Not all the questions are complete. There are solid craft. You want to be able to identify what's ET and what's consciousness. And it's tough enough for people just to accept ESP. They don't realize that, 200 years ago, Volta was dealing with the electromagnetic field, and everyone had the same paranormal phenomena fears about that, or ignored it, or whatever. And now, even friends of mine, I used to do stand-up comedy. They're like, you're freaking psychic now. It's like, I've always been. That's why I didn't freaking tell you, because I know you couldn't. You're not, initiated.
Yeah, freaking psychic now. I thought you was a comic.
Right, exactly. I thought you were just always funny.
I just thought you was funny, man. But this is really an interesting idea, Bud, because I don't think I've ever heard anybody talking about this apart from channeled sources. Everyone wants it to be coming from far away. They're getting in their metal ships and coming over here, and we always think of it as coming from outside, and there's a lot of fear around it.
Yes.
But
maybe they're coming from inside. Maybe our reality is just like the experiment found out at the Pear Institute at Princeton, that the quantum collapse model was better than the teleological model. So maybe, each conscious thing that observes the universe, quantum collapse is the most likely state of the system. And we all, basically what that means is something beautiful. We all collectively create our universe. And that means we could give our kids the tools to create the universe that they want to have. We didn't really embrace or understand our ability to create, but it's a logical extension of the two-slit experiment. If you really take it far, if you just add those same particles up.
I gotta say, buddy, there's
co-creation.
And there's a really good book about this. I don't know John Alexander personally. I've talked to him at the meetings, but this is a great book that he's written called Reality Denied: Truth, First-Hand Experiences with Things That Can't Happen But Did.
Should I mention this thing or not?
I'll give you a second to think about it. It's got a foreword by Uri Geller, and he has a chapter on each of the topics we're talking about, from Bigfoot. He's got an excellent summary chapter on the history of the RV program and his participation in it. UFOs, and just lots of really weird experiences that he's personally experienced and been involved with. And it's just chapter after chapter about mediums and psychokinesis and even martial arts. And I'm really enjoying this book. I've
got to get it.
John is at a lot of these meetings, and this, I enjoy his presentations. And I'm just saying, for someone who doesn't, this is not a, I don't know him personally, but just it's a great book to get brushed up on all these topics. Reality.
Colonel Alexander did a lot of the research with the government. He did a lot of secret stuff. He's done a lot of stuff. He worked extensively with Hutchinson, and he believed that Hutchinson was doing that all with his mind. He asked Hutchinson, is this an effect of the machines, or are you part of the machines? Are you part of the effect?
Yeah. What did he say? Yeah, I'm curious. What did he say?
He said it was both.
Both.
Hutchinson said both. Him and the machines. I have been talking with Colonel Alexander and discussing and working with him on a project. I can't say more than that. And usually I never mention a project while it's going on.
Yeah, that's a lot right there.
Blessing. I think I had a lot of different preconceived notions about it. He is so smart. He's so wise.
Yes. I've always enjoyed,
very few
people present him as a controversial character. He was in the military for quite a while, Operation Phoenix in Vietnam. We all have different feelings about Vietnam and so forth. But all I can say is my contact with him with these topics, he's one of the most open-minded people I've ever met in terms of his willingness to look at these and look at the evidence and realize it's quite complex and we don't really know what's going on. And he's one of the few people that I actually gets up there and says, we don't know what's going on. I so appreciate that, right? That's just why I appreciate him. Anyway, enough said.
So smart. He's so smart. He gave me and he's been giving me a bunch of just great sage advice based on seeing a lot of people at different levels and who could do different things over time and understands a lot of things. There's some things that just are kind of obvious to us and people who just get initiated. It's just one of those factual pieces of information that, this is I'll just say one of the small things he was telling me about. You just, precaution, wanted to make sure that I knew that if I tried to profiteer too much or tried to do anything like that, it might undermine my abilities.
Wow.
And I already, if everyone knows me, knows I'm so cautious about that. We never charge for anything and the whole 9 yards. And, I can't do anything too self-indulgent with the abilities and all that stuff. Like I can't, drive state to state, winning lotteries and only saving hot chicks. I can't do that. That's not moral. But so there is that moral factor too. If your morals fall off, if you get greedy with finances, you'll find your abilities diminished. And I've always had that as a belief. And when I heard him talk about that, I was just like, it was wonderful. But also Hathaway has spoken about that, and others have spoken about that in terms of people like Hutchinson losing his abilities.
So for people that don't know, what was his first name? Hutchinson? John. He was
Yeah.
able to, what was it, levitation, bend metals. I mean, there are pictures in John's book, and you're more familiar with it than me. Can you briefly
And
describe?
I'm friends with him a little bit, and his girlfriend now. They're trying to rebuild a lab in the West. I forget where they're at now, upstate California, I believe it is. And they're trying to build this lab. He was in the Gulf trying to clean up from the oil spill. He's just a wonderful guy, and he is so freaking smart. If you watch those old videos, I didn't when I first saw them, I thought they were fake because I only watched for like a second of them, and they looked really corny. But then when I watched all of them with the scientists and the army ones and everything, and it'll blow your mind. If you realize what he's really doing and you accept these videos, you have to accept some major reality manipulation can happen from your consciousness. I mean, he was doing everything, making things levitate, fly off. Things would accidentally go in the background too, like out of nowhere, because you can't completely control it. But he would try, he would focus. The effect would never happen in front of other people, because he probably wouldn't do all the secret little key things he did to make it happen in front of other people. The army brought him in, the CIA brought him in and brought him a lab and all that stuff, and he was able to recreate some of the stuff. And the samples are still transmuting now. He's metal one, metal to another. The first monopoles, he read about it one week and created it the next. I mean, so many things turn metals into jelly. I mean, oh my gosh, if you could turn metal into jelly,
So
where does it end?
the implication of what we're saying here, I guess, is that, as Ingo Swann said, we're in a reality box. We don't know our abilities, and what we consider normal is actually subnormal.
Yeah, we've been acting subnormal all along.
And this is all innate human ability that for centuries, millennia, we've been told don't touch it. It's
I brought a group
evil. It has to do with the devil. It's demonic. And so many people are afraid even to have this conversation we're having here. But you're telling us, buddy, I mean, it seems to make sense that we have this innate potential that really we're just discovering. You're saying everyone has this ability to some degree.
Yes, you know what? It was interesting. I brought a group of scientists came from Canada, from GEC, and they all had that workshop. I don't know if you remember that at Galileo Park. And it was a several-day, just over the weekend workshop. And we did everything from remote viewing to the last day we did psychokinesis. And a scientist bent metal. You know, all of them were inspected beforehand to make sure they're all definitely completely straight. One of the scientists, first time ever, bent a screwdriver. You know, you can do it too. Everybody can. And you have to try it the first time. It can be trying at home. I think most people give up after 10 minutes. But this famous French guy who can do it really good too, is like Jean-Pierre Quillard or whatever. He does a touch method where he just rubs it like this, rubs it like this, rubs it like this. And it's a lot better than like Uri's key, which, you know, they say he like bends quickly in other little moments and palms other ones and all this different stuff.
Oh, right. You sent me this video recently of this French guy bending things in front of a witness and the camera. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And he also even had a meter. They took him into the labs and he displayed the pressure and the heat and all these things on the equipment. So he was especially good early on. So and powerful. And he's not as powerful now as he was, 20 years ago when they first started studying him. But he would do the touch of these different standardized bars. I like doing the no touch version because it just rules out any other possibility. And just think about it. If you can bend metal from this far away, can you do it from that far away? Can you do it from that far away? Can you do it from a mile away? Can you do it from 5 miles away?
Well, as I mentioned to you, Bud,
Parallel.
I once spoke to a former Secretary of Defense who told me that he was present in a facility in D.C. I'm not supposed to say which one, that was monitoring a Soviet PK experiment where the sender bent a spoon from 1,000 miles away from Moscow.
Yeah.
So I guess you're not surprised.
You and I spoke about, and I think I sent around the CIA document about the Chinese psychics who were able to pass objects.
Yeah. And you've sent me those. Thank you. You sent me those documents. It was about a week ago, and I read it. Exactly right. That very interesting. And as we know, you've read those documents, and the reactions of the analysts are written. The CIA analysts are written on the top, and this creates a lot of fear, as some people are saying here in the comment section, that this is fear. You better bet that the intelligence agencies were afraid that this could be used as some sort of weapon against the United States.
And we saw in the CIA documents, they said their biggest fears is someone who had these abilities turning against, the United States or one of the intelligence agencies or any of that stuff. So there's a lot of fear about that. I'm not really scared about any of that stuff. This is about us showing our potential.
Do you
Ted Owens could bring down lightning bolts.
Oh, Ted Owens. Who's Ted Owens?
Ted Owens was a guy who approached Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ at SRI, but they just had Uri Geller, and they were getting enough heat from Uri Geller. And Ted Owens was a very spicy character. He was a psychic who
That's right.
claimed he affected sports games and the weather, and his powers came from two ETs who circled the Earth in an invisible craft, and the ETs were mantids named, I'm forgetting their names. But two mantids gave him his power, he said, and he could cast freaking lightning bolts.
Wait. Oh, let's rewind this. Two mantid ETs. These are like praying mantis type ETs.
Yes, insect. Yeah.
Because Uri Geller used to say things like this too. That there was this, I forgot the name of it, a craft orbiting the Earth that gave him his powers. And here another person came forward and said the same thing.
Yeah, Ted Owens. Yeah.
And what do you make of that?
I think it's all about your belief. Where does your belief line end? Do you believe you can turn metal into jelly? Do you believe you can get this next job? I don't think there's that much of a difference. Do you believe you can drive your car safely to work today? That's a miracle to me. I used to do a lot of stand-up comedy, and I could make people laugh through a TV around the world or across the stage. And laughter is a healing, beautiful thing. Give someone laughter at a distance, that's a non-local healing. We're all doing these things, I think, in a certain degree, and this is just another form of it. And I've been speaking with, and Maureen Seberg was someone who I approached and just had this connection. The universe brought us together, and I had a lot of synesthesia when I was younger and felt a little dorky and weird about it. And I think if you have any synesthesia or any weird, anything, like you were saying before, there's a new normal. We've been acting subnormal all this time. The kids were acting weird who were pumping full of drugs to sedate them. Maybe we're turning the next Einstein into John Tesh. We're softening everyone up. Maybe society needs those, kids the most.
Should we be teaching this to kids in school?
Of course. We have physical education. We should obviously have consciousness education. If every kid knew that through empathy and resonance and harmonics and empathy, they could have superpowers like Harry Potter and all these. They knew that we would never have another shooting because every kid would be empathizing and connecting with every kid. They wouldn't let one kid fall between the cracks. And
now,
all had more empathy.
But, buddy, this is really interesting because, as some of you know, I teach this class. I call it Human Fusion. But I'm not trying to advertise it here, but it's just, you mentioned something that's the core of the Human Fusion class. It could also be called Time Lord because the idea is to start using your imagination to see other possibilities for what you're doing. But you know what the key principle is behind making it work? I've done 7 of these classes. We've had great results every time. We use RV. People view their futures. They see possibilities. But you know what the key that makes it work is something you just said. You actually have to believe that what you're seeing in your imagination is something that is attainable to you. And if it doesn't feel believable, you need to scale it back closer to what is in your reality now until it feels like something that, I really believe in a matter of maybe a couple of weeks, I could do that. If it's too extreme, you've got to scale it back. But once you feel in your bones that it's believable, you start acting like it's believable. And this seems to me what's produced the results for students in this class over the last 7 or 8 years is you get to the point where you believe it. And what do you have to do? Take action. You actually have to do something that is consistent with that belief, or you're going to stay exactly where you are now, which is fine if you're totally happy where you are now. But that's the thing is it's the belief, right? The belief in it.
Very powerful. And you know what? This applies in all of these arts from, CE5 to healing. I had to believe that I could do this stuff in front of researchers to bring myself to researchers. That's a pretty ballsy move.
Yeah.
For Ingo Swann to go to the scientists and the researchers, it meant he was confident. He knew his abilities were real. And I was re-looking at a tape from my channel, and I was talking about Ingo and this notion that a lump of him is here, and if he can see across space and time, in effect, touch across space and time. Literally, he did this with all sorts of different devices and tests. Then a part of him was actually there at that location, touching it. Some part of him was actually touching a machine non-locally. And if he's really if he can do that, then when his lump is gone from this world, he's just a little bit more now everywhere else. So it's pretty neat that I think we're all literally connected to everything. We know there's some structure where everything is one. That's how
Maybe
we all call it. Some people call it the monad, the oneness.
maybe we're just all a lot bigger than we think we are.
Yeah. And
You-
it's one. I wonder what's the parameters, Doc? If you can call lightning bolts and you can transmute metals, what can't you do?
Well, we got to get out of our hypnosis that somehow the powers that be like to leave us in and start acting like we have more abilities and powers in a positive way, obviously. Because think about how the RV program started. It was Ingo showing Hal Puthoff that he could have, not only could he view the magnetometer, which was highly shielded beneath a couple feet of concrete at SRI or somewhere at Stanford, but he could affect it with his mind. And I was reading in Valet's book too. I mean, I don't think this was a mistake that Pat Price could do it too. Is that accurate, or was it just Ingo?
There is also a story about Pat Price they pissed him off and he did something pretty powerful.
Apparently. Oh, he did. Same thing.
Yeah. Pat Price did something really big too, apparently. But, I think all of those masters, I felt such a weird connection to them, like January of last year, especially going through all this different stuff I was going through. And I think all the masters, as you go back in time, they always want us to believe in our own abilities, believe in ourselves. And I think naturally, intrinsically, because of the nature of the universe, you can't get more powerful, I don't think, to a certain degree, without doing a lot of introspection and going through a lot of kind of a self-initiation. Now, Ted Owens is a little bit of a contradiction because he wasn't like walking the path of virtue necessarily all the time, but he was very powerful.
And
so there's a lot of...
This is quite a circle here because we're about to approach Christmas. And wasn't it Jesus, or as we say in my language, Aramaic Hebrew, Yeshua? Wasn't he the one who told us that what I have done, so can you also do? Didn't he say this over and over again? I don't know why that's forgotten from the message. He didn't want people to worship him. Didn't he want people to be like him?
Yeah, and you know what? We are all shamans.
Yeah.
I made that decision to do this full time, and it's been the most wonderful experience of my life, the most exhilarating, the most fulfilling things. Guy, I was talking about to a friend today how, I don't know if you remember that this guy was being head stomped, and I knew some of the kids who were stomping. I knew if he had any more head stomping, the guy was going to die. And somehow I just flew out of the vehicle, and like an astral projection, and broke it up and everything. And one of the young kids came up to me afterwards and said, "You saved 10 lives last night."
Yes, you were telling me about it. So you witnessed a violent action outside your vehicle, and you went out and stopped it. You saved someone from getting killed and all those guys going to jail.
Yeah, basically, that one guy, if he would have gotten a few more stomps to the head, he would have died. But I wasn't, a couple of the guys knew them, and they called me Russia or the dentist because they knew me from Gotham.
Oh, the dentist, yes.
And so they all like me. He's from TV, the TV star, And so one of the guys said, he's cool. I saw one of the kids who was going to come around and sucker punch me after I jumped in, and I'm like, God's watching you. And the guys, look at him. You're going to kill him. You're all going to go to jail. You're on cameras. You see that camera there and that camera there. And anyway, one of the kids I'd known for a while, I always, smile and talk to or whatever. And so the next day he came up to me and said that. And that was like, wow. And, I bet, all these different people, we all can be, great. Most people would say, most wives would say, or girlfriends would say, Simeon, don't get involved in that fight. But you know what? In that moment, I cared more about those other people than I did myself.
Right.
And I had the confidence.
Good for you, bud.
I believe
we have to. We have
a bit of both, though.
No, we have to get involved. We've all been taught to be too passive, and there's times where we have to step up and take action when we see injustice occurring. Otherwise, it doesn't correct, even at some risk to yourself. You have
And,
to trust that things will work out in the way because you're taking the correct action, right?
and I believe the moment I could do it safely, I believed I could make a difference. It wasn't like a suicidal tendency, and that didn't even require mojo. But I think a lot of these people, a lot of these shaman and great people that societies respect, or people that sculptures are made after, and all that stuff, and even great businessmen today may not even know that they are really gifted. But I think they've always shown a lot of these different things. They've shown the abilities, but they've also shown the moral message, just as powerful as the abilities. And doing good just as
Yes.
as powerful as the abilities. So,
Well, buddy, I think on that note, we've gone through an hour, just like 2 seconds. I
yeah,
just want to say to
I'm-
folks that Buddy and I agreed to do some more episodes this week because
yeah,
this is a great week to do between now and the new year, right? We'll do some more and we'll
yep,
talk amongst ourselves, Buddy, about the next episode in a couple days. How about that?
yeah. And if you guys want to see anything or have us a topic,
Yeah, yeah.
today we
Just
um
write to us and we'll do it. So thanks
yeah,
again, audience. Thanks for all your participation. Thanks, Buddy, for showing up. I'm going to
love you guys.
run another funny one that Bud did here of Star Wars, and then we'll go into our theme and we will see you next time. Let's see if it works here.
If you watch
Oh, no,
Reality's
that's not
Edge
it.
with Doc and Buddy, it
That
will
wasn't.
increase your psychic abilities.
Well, I know I had it in here.
Too much.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. Wait a minute. No. Okay.
Humans think we're gonna save them,
Wait.
but they keep shooting at us.
Wait a minute. I want to get one.
Pops too much in that one.
Oh yeah, we could save them, no problem. Easy, save the whole
Sorry if I
planet.
overtalked
But we're
stuff.
not
Oh,
gonna
it's
because
all
they
right.
keep shooting at us.
That's my alien.
Oh wait. Hold on a second here. Well, I'm gonna hold on. We got.
Oh, the Star Wars strip one.
Wait a second. Okay. We will have it for next time. We will have it for next time.
Yes.
Let's go.
If you watch Reality's Edge with Doc and Buddy, you will learn there are other dimensions. You will learn how to connect to beyond.